Welcome to another session of Church Administration 202. Today we're going to be looking at the basics of Robert's Rules of Order. Every minister should know how to conduct a business meeting using Robert's Rules of Order, and that's what we'll be learning in today's session. There are several things that you should expect to learn in this presentation. One is the background of Robert's Rules, the history. And then, why should we use Robert's Rules of Order in the first place? Then, what's the purpose of Robert's Rules? And then we will look at 10 basic rules that will help guide you as you are involved as a presiding officer of a business meeting. Then, how to run a meeting efficiently. How to keep the minutes. Every secretary needs to know how to keep the minutes and what's necessary to be kept in the minutes of any business meeting. Then we will examine motions and voting, as well as how to protect the rights of those who have a dissenting voice. And then we will discuss motions, how to make them. And then we will have some questions and answers concerning Robert's Rules of Order to finish off this discussion today. Robert's Rules of Order is the default legal process for most groups, including churches. It was first published in 1876 as a synthesis of the existing practices derived from British parliamentary law and continuously revised since then. Robert specifies the creation and maintenance of what are technically known as deliberative assemblies. It is through the action of deliberative assemblies that most of our public business is legally conducted. Roberts has been used since 1876. Why do we use Roberts in the first place? Well, it's obvious that deliberative assemblies must operate in a manner that is formal, fair, and democratic. It's generally agreed that Roberts provides such a process. The process described by Robert is basically what anyone would use to conduct a meeting that is fair and operates where the majority rule. Then a second reason why we should use Roberts: a group approach to an orderly process requires a structure. Roberts' documentation is very widely available, and it can continue to function even when resolving questions where there are deeply opposing points of view. The purpose of Robert's Rules of Order is to provide a way to make decisions based upon common sense and logic. The rules do the following three things. They protect the rights of the majority to decide. That is, if there is a simple majority, over 50% of those voting, the majority decides the issue. But it's also equally important to protect the rights of the minority so that their voices can be heard. And then third, the rules protect the rights of the individual members, and those rights are important as well. Now in this slide, in the next one, we'll look at the 10 basic rules Robert uses. Now, these are simplified, and they're not all the rules by any stretch of the imagination, but if you know these rules and apply them, they will help you get through almost any meeting. Number one is the rights of the organization supersede the rights of the individual members. Always remember that the members are important, but ultimately the organization and its rights are more important and more valuable even than individual members. Number two, members are equal and their rights are equal. Those rights include to extend the meeting, to make motions, to discuss motions, to speak to a motion. They have a right to nominate, to vote, and to hold office, among other rights. Then number three, a quorum must be present to conduct business. For general business meetings, the quorum can be defined in whatever way the organization wants to define the word quorum. It could be 10% of the members, and that's a good rule of thumb. Others simply state in their constitution and bylaws that those present constitute a quorum. You need to be sure that you understand what a quorum is in your church business meeting, and typically you'll find this in the church constitution and bylaws. Then, number 4, the majority rules. All questions that are legally expressed in a meeting should be decided by a simple majority of the votes cast unless stipulated otherwise in the Constitution. And then number 5, silence means consent. Those members who do not vote are simply by their silence saying, "I agree to go along with the decision of the majority." Now we continue the 10 basic rules. Number 6, a 2/3 vote is necessary anytime you limit or take away the rights of members or change a previous decision. So a 2/3 vote rules. Number 7, one question at a time and one speaker at a time. Motions must be related to matters under consideration. And once a member has been recognized, that individual has been granted the floor and may not be interrupted by any member. Number 8, motions must receive full debate. The presiding officer may not put a motion to a vote as long as a member desires to debate the issue, unless, of course, the body closes debate. Debate can only be cut short by a 2/3 vote. Number 9, once the decision is made, an identical motion must not be brought forward in the same meeting. Such a motion should be ruled out of order by the presiding officer. If a motion needs to be reconsidered, it may be, but it must be at another general meeting, and then a 2/3 majority vote would be required to reconsider. And then number 10, personal remarks in any debate are always out of order. They are always out of order. You debate motions, not motives. Debate must be directed to principles and not personalities. Hopefully these 10 rules will help you when you're called on to moderate a meeting. The next 2 slides will have as a topic how to run a meeting effectively. In order to run a meeting effectively, the chairperson must remember the following things. Number 1, start on time and stay on time. Number 2, you need to be organized. That is, have a meeting agenda. Set out ahead of time exactly what you intend to accomplish, how much time it should take, and when to move on. Then be prepared by knowing the rules of parliamentary procedure and the bylaws of the organization that you serve. This slide continues our discussion from the former slide, that is, how to run a meeting. The chair needs to be able to control the floor. That is, the chairperson is responsible to be sure that only one person is speaking at a time on one subject at a time. Then the chair is to be impartial. The chair should be composed. That means that the chair is to have his feelings and expressions under control. In other words, he needs to be calm. Be precise. Be able to restate a motion before the vote is taken. He is also focused. He stays on track with the discussion going on in the meeting. And then he's temperate. He should be under control, Call someone out of order only sparingly. If you practice these simple tips, it will help you run an effective meeting. On this slide, and the one to follow, we'll talk about keeping minutes of the meetings. Minutes are the written record of the proceedings, and typically the secretary of the organization will be the person who takes minutes. Minutes are the written records of the meeting. They are really more than that. Minutes are the permanent and legal record of the meeting. They should be written as concisely as possible. And then the secretary's view should never be that of being in conflict with those members who are speaking, or expressing an opinion, or voting. What should the secretary be sure to include in the minutes? Well, she should record the time of the meeting. There needs to be a report that a quorum is present. There should be a brief description of any discussion, not word for word. Do not put the name of a person who said such and such in the minutes. Simply include a brief description of the discussion. Then you will want to have a record of all motions. Here you would need to include the name of the person who made the motion. You would want to include the person who seconded the motion, put their name in the minutes, and then the result of the vote. Record that the motion either passed or failed, nothing more. Don't put that a motion passed 13 to 12. You should never put the vote as it is taken in terms of the numbers in your minutes, just whether it passed or failed. And last, the secretary puts the time of adjournment, who the presiding officer was, and the name of the secretary who took the minutes. What about the approval of minutes? At each meeting, minutes need to be reviewed from the prior meeting. This can either be done by reading the minutes or preferably by having them printed so that each member will have a copy and can simply read over it. Thus, if you have printed minutes, you're able to stay on your timetable. Allow for corrections, additions, or deletions. When I'm presiding in a business meeting, I simply say, after the minutes have been read, are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? If there are none, they will stand approved as read or as printed. The minutes are basically a reminder to the members of the previous decisions and discussion that the organization had at its prior meeting. Now, what about making motions and conducting a vote? A good rule of thumb is keep it simple. Any voting member may make a motion. Another thing you need to keep in mind is a voting member must also second the motion before it can ever be discussed. Discussion can then take place after the motion has been made and a second. Following the discussion, the chairperson calls for a vote. You could simply say, those in favor say aye, or those opposed say no. The results should then be announced, for it is only after the results are announced that the vote is official. This slide is very straightforward. When decision and discussion are open to the members of the organization, simply remember that the basic premise is to help and not hinder the decision process. And you certainly don't want to hinder the decision making. I encourage you to be a good parliamentarian by knowing Robert's rules and being fair to every member. If you would like to have more information on conducting a business meeting, the following web addresses will serve as a resource. If you do not moderate a business meeting, then these would be excellent resources for the person in your church who does preside over the meetings. We now turn our attention to some questions and answers for Robert's Rules of Order. What is a motion? A motion is a formal proposal by a member in a meeting that the group takes certain action. A main motion is one whose introduction brings business before an assembly. There should be no debate on any matter before a motion has been made, and only one main motion may be before the assembly for action at a time. What is an amendment? An amendment is a proposal which, if adopted, modifies the wording and within limits alters the meaning of the main motion. Amendments should say exactly where in the main motion the changes would be made and precisely what words to use. Amendments, like main motions, can be required by the chair to be submitted in writing. What do you do if you want to bring up a new idea before the group? To bring a new idea before the group, you first have to have the floor, which is accomplished by standing and addressing the chair with whatever that person's title might be. For example, Mr. Chairman. The chair will then recognize the person wanting to make the motion, thereby giving the individual the floor. After having the floor, make a motion by saying, "I move that." Use those words, "I move that," and then clearly describe the proposal. It's important to say precisely what the words of the motion are. Writing down the motion beforehand is an excellent way to ensure the correct wording. After making the motion, you immediately sit down. Number 4, what should you do if you want to change some of the wording in a motion under discussion? You should propose an amendment to change some of the wording in a motion under discussion. You have to be recognized, have the floor, and then say, "I move to amend." You have to use those words. You don't say, "I make a motion to amend." It is, "I move to amend," and then state the part or parts to be deleted and or what needs to be added. Communicate so that the body will know the amendment's precise location in the main motion. The chair may ask that the amendments be in writing to ensure the correct language for the amendment. A vote on the amendment is not a vote on the main motion. Only after the amendment is voted on can the main motion be reconsidered. Examples of simple word changes might be insert or add words, strike out words, and insert words. Number 5. What should you do if you like the idea of a motion being discussed, but you need to reword it beyond just a few word changes? One way to do this is to insert a paragraph or strike out a paragraph, or the substitute, which can involve replacing one or more paragraphs in the immediate pending motion with one or more paragraphs given in an amendment. On this slide, we will look at some additional questions. Number 6. What should you do if you want more study and or investigation given to the idea being discussed? Well, a motion can be made to postpone to a certain time, to allot time for more study and investigation. Or another motion could be made to refer the issue to a committee for further evaluation. What should you do if you are tired of the current discussion and want to move forward with the meeting? To close the debate immediately, one can call for the motion for the previous question. This requires a 2/3 vote and is undebatable. The proper wording to close debate on a pending motion is to say, I move the previous question. Number 8, what should you do if you want more time personally to study the proposal before a decision is made? A motion to postpone can be made to give more time for you to study or investigate the idea. A time frame should be stated in the motion to postpone and should be stated with these words: I move to postpone the motion until, and then you say a designated time. The motion requires a second. And then what should you do if you want to postpone a motion until sometime later? A motion can be made to postpone a motion until some later time by either making a motion to postpone to a certain time or to lay on the table. The motion to lay on the table allows the assembly to delay voting on the main motion. It is temporarily set aside with no time frame for reconsidering the motion. Laying on the table has a provision that the proposal can be taken up again whenever a majority decide they would like to do so. And then last, number 10, what should you do if you want to end the meeting? A member can propose to close the meeting by simply saying, I move to adjourn. This motion can be made and the assembly can adjourn even while business is pending, provided that the time for the next meeting is established by the rule of the organization or has been set by the assembly. The motion is one of the first rank, therefore it precedes any other motion on the floor and is not debatable. A simple majority will rule.